The following is intended only for mature audiences. Always consult legal and medical professionals when needed. Viewer discretion is advised. Good evening, everybody. This is Michael. I am coming here as soon as I get her off of mute, poor dear. Tonight it's myself and Reverend Pat Beers here on another edition of Terra Turas. Heather, I'm sure, she's got a few things that are going on. So this evening it's just going to be Pat and I. Pat, how are you this evening?
Oh, great. She's getting ready to go to Hawaii. She doesn't have time for us right
I
now.
know. She's got so much going on. I feel bad for her, but at the same time, it's kind of like, wow, there's so much that is going on. It's not even funny.
Mhm.
Pat, this evening we are going to be talking about angels. And I know I listen to you mention them often, very, very often. And I wanted to cover some of the different things that people perceive as angels this evening. Because I know that quite often you will talk about archangels. And one of the biggest ones that you talk about is Archangel Michael. And these are for people that are theological based, the archangels and the other angels are the ones that we learn about in Sunday school and catechism, in church, in all of this. So they're spoken about in the Bible. So those are the theological based angels. But people tend to forget that there are a wide array of
Yeah.
angels, and especially when we start talking about angels that guide us, angels that we bump into, we may not even recognize them when they are in our lives affecting what we are doing. And I've got a perfect example of that. I know I spoke about it on an earlier show, but you and I have spoken many times. We're going to start with the theological, the big archangels, if you will, because those are the ones that you reference most often. When you talk about the Archangel Michael, what is it that you reference about him the most?
I know people think I'm crazy, but I always reference strength and love, protection. He's the patron saint of police and firemen.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just, if I'm dealing with someone that's very difficult or I get the feeling that their intentions are maybe not good, I ask Archangel to stand behind me or the client I'm talking to, and I ask him to use his mighty sword to cut any and all cords between them and the person causing an issue. I ask him also to cauterize the ends so they cannot reattach.
Now, when you talk about cutting cords, can you tell me a little bit what you mean by that so that other people
I
can have a better idea?
My personal belief is that everyone we encounter, we kind of had a thread connected to them. That's better, I guess, than saying a cord.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes these people are connecting to us because and they're what we call psychic vampires, or people who are very needy, and they tend to. We all have those friends that, oh, hey, it's Susie. Okay, I can talk to her. And oh, it's Mary. Okay, I'm going to let this one go to voicemail. I'll call her back later when I have time to deal with her, or when I'm feeling like I have a better handle on being able to talk with her. The constant victims. We all know people who are constant victims, and that's all they complain about. So if I feel like they're drawing on me a lot, I want St. Michael to please stand behind me, cut any cords, connections to that person that are not for our highest and best good, not just myself, but also for the person I'm talking about. And so it would be like somebody taking a scissors and cutting the stray hair around your head that, don't want to go away. They don't want to lay down a rooster tail or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him to cauterize the ends because I found through time, and I believe this was a message from the angels, that if we don't cauterize the ends and seal them, they can reattach themselves to us. You feel good for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I talked to him or her again, and now all of a sudden I am exhausted. I can't keep my energy up. So then I need to disconnect from them again. And I ask that they get the guidance they need from the angels to help them to proceed and do what they need to do, or see what they need to see, because a lot of times they don't see what they need to see.
And that's kind of important because, again, for people that are either watching or going to be listening on a podcast, it's important in that they understand that we're talking more metaphysical energy than actual cord or actual threads that are attached to us.
Right.
But just because it is the metaphysical side does not mean that people can't feel it or that they aren't aware of it. You feel an attachment, and you might feel a pull towards someone.
Or you're just too tired, and the only thing that fits is every time I talk to this person or think of that person, and they may be thinking me, I'm going like, hey. It's like somebody plugged into me and I'm the battery, and now my energy's going low.
And that's important too, because people need to remember that we spoke about this last week on the show, where things are energetic and ripple effects and things like that. So we're attached to other people often, and doing so in various different ways.
It can also be a place. You can realize that when I go to this office building, or when I go to that restaurant or whatever, that, wow, I felt so good when I went in, and now I'm feeling a little tired. So the place can suck energy from you also, I feel.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of odd, Pat, in the chat room, and I know that you don't have that pulled up because your PC just runs nice the way that it is right now. Lady by the name of Kelly.
Michael's making fun of my technical abilities, folks, which don't exist.
Pat is technically challenged, but she's awesome. But Kelly in the chat room said that she's got Terra Turas and Wednesday wine. And I'm like, that sounds kind of lovely all on its own. There's no doubt about it.
If it's my Kelly, she's also a gorgeous blonde with blue eyes, yes.
Kelly Broadhurst?
Yep.
Now we all know.
Now y'all know.
Good evening, Kelly. When you were describing that we are attached to a lot of other people. Kimberly Kerr, how are you doing, Kimberly? We are attached to other people, family members, friends, places like Pat said that we visit, and it's not always the healthy side of being attached, and that can create a problem. And what Pat was talking about in cutting cords is getting rid of the attachment, the connection. It's not kicking these people out of your life or ruining anything. It is just getting rid of a negative connection that might be present. And that's kind of important.
They may not even know they're doing it. You know what I mean? They just get used to, when I talk to so-and-so, I feel better, and they don't even know they're doing it. And then they build on that. The ripple effect, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Now, in talking about the archangels, in biblical terms or in theological terms, there are 7 archangels. Michael being the highest, the biggest, the leader of all of the archangels. Another one that comes into play that you will hear people talk about from points of time is Archangel Raphael. Uh-huh. And Raphael is, my understanding, and I'm looking at some things that I had printed out, is designated more of the emotional healing side. So when Pat is talking about having Michael cutting cords and things, then you would look to Raphael in order if you were having some emotional difficulty or things like that. And folks, you have to remember, just because it is brought to your attention in a theological or biblical way, does not mean you have to address them in a theological or biblical way. These are spiritual things that are there always, and they will respond to their name. You can't just go, "Hey, Archangel Michael, come wipe my rear end with some toilet paper." That's irreverent, disrespectful, and many different things. That's not the way that you would go about it. So when you're doing these things, when you're trying to work with angels, just remember, respectful, be polite, be sincere. Because without the sincerity, you're going to wind up with a boatload of stuff that you really may not want. Do you often think about Raphael, or do you ever call on Raphael to do things?
I do, and it's funny because I have a book by Doreen Virtue. It's old, it's thick, and it's called Angels and Ascended Masters. And I used to carry it with me, but it got to be quite heavy. And our angels can't help us if we don't ask.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a believer in praying in the affirmative. Thank you, angels. I send my angels before me every day to remove all discordance from my path. Like we have dis-ease, I ask them to please remove all discordance. You'll be amazed how much smoother your day will go. And I also feel like they're helping us, but we're helping them. And sometimes when I'm working with people, I will hear a name and I'm not even sure I know if this is an angel. So if I have time, I will Google,
Mm-hmm.
angel so and so. What is their specialty? Or I'll ask for an angel for protection or health or something. And they don't always come to us with wings and whatnot. You know what I mean? Um, we expect them to come with the wings and
And again,
be
that's
that
the
angelic.
biblical side that says they're angelic, they've got wings, they are massive, 10 foot tall. They can be, but like Pat says, it's not always that way. They don't always walk around
No.
with
And
full regalia.
right. If you have a sense of humor, you have to watch John Travolta's Michael.
That is an
He
excellent movie.
smoked, he drank, he wore a raincoat over his wings, he looked like Columbo. I mean, I love that movie.
There were
I mean,
so many people when they watched that movie that they thought it was so irreverent that some of the churches went, "We're banning that. We're not watching that. We're not doing that." And you don't get it, folks. They have a sense of humor just like us. They just have a much more serious job than we do currently. Moving right on down the list here, Pat. Archangel Gabriel. And there have been a lot of movies that have portrayed Gabriel as a man. And it's actually a female archangel. And she is
I
the
think,
only
yeah,
female archangel. And it's written in biblical in that fashion. I'm trying just to glance through this because this is an angel that helps teachers, journalists, people that are writing in much of any nature. If you were sitting and writing a book, this would be the archangel that you might want to have some conversation with if you're writing and having a problem or the prose is not right or things like that. Further on down the list, this is one that I really don't know much about. Archangel Jophiel.
right.
And
I
now that's pretty bad on my part. I thought I knew them all, but
There are so many. There are hundreds, and they don't all come like with Jophiel and all these Gabriel and Zadkiel and all those. And I call on Archangel Gabriel for communication.
mm-hmm.
If people are having a problem communicating, I ask them to ask for help from Archangel Gabriel.
And that's a big one. Uh,
Big
Kimber,
big problem for many things. Government
yes,
people, teachers. I mean, you name it. That's a problem.
And they are. They're kind of stacked up in their own specialty to be able to help people walk through life to achieve things. Kimberly Shannon said that she's seen an angel at one point. Kimberly, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit because there's some heavy kind of things that Pat and I have experienced in our own time. Archangel Ariel. And again, it is one of the things, it more to protect Earth and environment and things like that, and wildlife. That's one that I knew about and again had forgotten because it's not on my mind every day. Now, Pat, I'm going to tell people, if you are ever around Pat for any length of time, you will hear her talking to various angels almost every day. She does this, and I've traveled with Pat, so I know. She gets in her car and she'll say a quick prayer or blessing to start a journey, to end a journey. She's very reverent, very thankful. So it's, for her, this is part of her everyday life. And she walks, talks, and does all of this all the time. On my side, on my end of the yardstick, when I run into problems is when I will address archangels or angels and say, can you help me out? Can you perform? Can you show me what I need? So Pat and I have a very different set of experiences with all of this. You mentioned Archangel Azrael, and often referred to as the angel of death, but helping people newly crossing over or helping people pass and getting souls more into heaven. That one,
Michael, that's also about any kind of an ending, a divorce, separate, end of a job. So don't put them in a box, because that's what we tend to do.
And here again, that's my brain thinking in this square, saying, well, this is what they do. No, it's not. And I'm glad that you said that, because they are multifaceted beings. It's not just for a particular kind of thing. So as Pat said, you said like divorce, end of job, things like that.
A death of a situation. People always think, I don't know if I talked about her, but 93-year-old lady that's dreaming about death all the time. But there are many changes going on in her family's life and many changes going on in what she's physically able to do. And I said, that could be just that. The death of you being able to drive your car. She gave up driving her car. So, some people just get focused on that thing. They think it's death automatically, and it's not always. It's a transition.
See, and this is the reason that I wanted to have these kinds of conversations this evening, is to help people understand more. And folks, I've known Pat for a long time, and I'm still getting an education from listening to Pat or doing things, or but it's amazing, because I never would have thought of that. When you give up the keys to the car and you're 92, it would be the death of that particular type of freedom. Interesting. Here's one. Well, it's interesting because I never think that far outside of the box. I'm a guy, and our thought process is, I will not say narrow, but confined.
Logical.
Unfortunately. And we see a particular problem or a particular thing, and we think in a particular fashion.
Yeah.
Here's the issue, here's the resolution, apply it, done, go to the next part. Listen to her, she'd say, Archangel, and it's Chamuel. Chamuel?
Chamuel.
And more of a peace-bringing archangel. We think of Archangel Michael as more the leader and would lead into war if it became that point in time, biblically. So this Archangel Chamuel is more of the high we're going to bring peace to the world. And that rounds out the 7 of the archangels. But
Well,
that's not all the angels. That's that's the second kind of part that I wanted to talk to people about this evening, is angels that are all over the place, and they're in your everyday life. Now, Pat, you and I were talking a little bit earlier before the show started. You mentioned a couple of different times, one that happened particularly to you, one that happened to someone else when you called on an angel to do something. So could you tell people what happened to you?
well, I was in a car with a friend who's since deceased.
Now,
Um,
when was this? How long ago?
I would say that one was probably in the 70s, late 70s. We had wanted to go down to Serpent Mound. There were three of us. And we had wanted to go to well, there are actually four of us, but three of us could only get there. So we finally said, the heck with it, myself, Mary, and the one who was driving. Well, she had a bit of a lead foot and it started to rain. It started to pour. And we kept saying, Becky, please slow down. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Well, we didn't know. She said, yeah, I guess I do need new tires though, because every once in a while she'd, kind of hydroplane or slide a little bit. So we're crossing this long bridge over I don't know what interstate we were on, but we were crossing over another interstate. And her car started spinning around. And we're looking at that little 3-foot wall on the side. And if we hit that sucker, we're going over to the freeway below. And my girlfriend Mary said I screamed and I called on the angels. Angels, period. There was a car behind us with other friends, and the friends said that the car literally lifted off the ground. It was facing the wrong direction, turned around, and traveled through the air to the other side of the bridge and was put down on the road. Now,
Wow.
needless to say, she finally slowed down. And we didn't make it to Serpent Mound that day because we were all such a mess and it was pouring down rain. We came back home.
Wow. And people will naturally stop and say that's impossible. And I would tell people, try not to think in terms of limits of what is possible and what is not possible. These are the forces that are at work in our life, whether we would like to admit them or not. Whether we hear strange stories and we're going, well, I don't know if that's true. If you haven't experienced something yourself, just because it hasn't happened to you, does not mean that it's not true. And here's Pat, living proof, in a car with witnesses behind them telling them what happened.
We were just so happy to be safe and not spinning, but they said it was something to behold.
Hmm. Now, you said that there was a second one, a gentleman that was driving a car.
Oh, one of my very first teachers, 40 some years ago, his name was Jack Baum, Reverend Jack Baum, and he was coming home from Canton. And he had a gentleman he rented rooms to. It was actually his cousin. And they were coming up from Canton. And this is now 40 years ago. We know what 77 was like. I mean, there weren't. All of a sudden, he's in a blinding snowstorm and he's just sliding and he couldn't tell where the road was. And he said, angels take the wheel. And he said, they literally took the wheel and he sat with his hands in his lap the whole way home. And when his roommate, house person that lived with him, woke up and saw Jack sitting there with his hands in his lap, he starts cussing and carrying on. Jack said, fine, we're fine. He lived on the west side of Akron behind Tangier. He said, we'll be home in a little while. And the guy, he told him he was dreaming because he had such a hard time believing this had actually happened. He went, oh, you must have been dreaming.
Wow.
And then two friends of mine, she just told us about this on Sunday. She and her mom had been out this winter and they were driving and they were out on a rural road and they got into some real icy conditions and she was terrified because she was sure that they were going to get in an accident. And her mother said, Angel, take the wheel. And the same thing. They just drove them where they needed to be and then they got home.
And that's a big one. People, when you call on angels and it is a sincere call, they are going to be right there. The one The one that is from my own life. Years ago, and again, this is in late 80s, early 90s, I believe. But years ago, I had a phobia of being in large crowds. I couldn't stand it. It would drive me up the wall. All the pressure, all the feeling, all the emotion was just horrible. It was Christmas time, Christmas Eve, as a matter of fact, and there was only one place that I could get what I wanted for a gift, so I had to go to the mall. I got it. I'm walking out, and there's just this crowd of people, and I'm surrounded, and I feel like I'm going to throw up. It's horrible. It was just horrible. Out of nowhere comes this little lady about Pat's size, 5 foot nothing. She's older. She has a cane. And she looked up at me and she goes, "Sweetheart, are you okay?" I said, "No, ma'am, I am not. I need to get out." She goes, "Well, you follow me." And she walked in front of me and she took her cane. And as people, she would go, "Pardon me, excuse me." And she was being polite. But if people weren't paying attention, she would take her cane and tap them or rap them on the ankle and say, "Move, please, move, please." She guided me all the way to the nearest exit so that I could get outside. And she goes, "Here you go." And I opened the door to get a breath of fresh air. I turned around to say thank you, and there was no one that matched that description anywhere around me. Nowhere. Now, this happened in my life, so I know what has happened, but that was an angel that was there to guide and protect me. I was trying to do the right thing. I needed to get out. There they were. And that's one of those things that I don't know if a lot of people have experienced something similar in their life, where they have had something happen, you turn around to say thank you or to do something, and all of a sudden they're gone. That's the angelic side coming out.
Can I tell you a couple stories about that stuff?
Go ahead.
My neighbor was 102 when she passed, and we lived next door to her 40 some years. And she was doing a yard sale. Her husband passed in the mid 70s, and she was doing a yard sale because she needed money. And she brought out an old Kodak Brownie, I don't know, old camera, still in working order. She put it into yard sale for like $10.
Mm,
A
mm,
gentleman came, and it was funny because it sat there most of the day. And a gentleman came and he says, "Ma'am," he says, "you really need to put that away and find out how much it's worth." And she said, "What?" And she says, "Well, don't you want, I mean, do you want me to drop the price?" And he said, "No, I want you to put that in the house, and I want you to have either you research it or have someone in your family research the value of that camera." She later sold it for, I believe, $125. And I think that was probably cheap. Um, and there was oh gosh, it's been 20, 30 years ago. Lady came to me at a fair in Warren, and she was so worried. She had lost her job and she needed a new office job, and she really didn't have the wardrobe she felt she needed. So she went stop shopping at O'Neill's when it was still O'Neill's over in the Warren area.
mm-hmm.
And I think it's Niles, I'm not sure. Well, anyhow, she went shopping, and they used to have the better dressed department off by itself, kind of. And she was going to the restroom, and she went to the restroom, and this little old lady clerk, snow white hair, glasses, came out and said, "Oh, honey, we're having some wonderful sales. You should really come in here and look." And she said, "Oh, thank you, but I couldn't afford to shop there." And she said, "Oh, you'd be surprised. We're having some wonderful sales." So she got her to come. She said, "You go to the restroom and come back and talk to me." So she went to the restroom, and she came back, and for like, she said she $50, which she didn't have. She got a nice blouse, a nice skirt, and she said she was going to go on a job interview. And the lady said, "Well, you good luck, honey." She said, "I think you're going to do quite well." She was a secretary or something like that. So she went back. She got the job. She went back a few weeks later looking for this clerk, and they said, "Oh, I don't know who she is. I have no idea who you're talking about." And she said, "Well, okay, all right, thank you." And so she went back again about a week or two later. It was over a period of a month that she went back the third time. And she's going to the restroom, and that same lady's there in the better dress department. She said, "Well, did you get the job?" And she said, "Well, yes, I did. Thank you so much for helping me." She said, "Honey, we're having another wonderful sale. You should come in here because I think we can find you some more blouses and maybe a nice jacket." And she did. Okay. She left, and every time she'd go back in that store, she'd look for her. She found her one more time, and she said, her name was like Mabel or something. It was an unusual old fashioned name. And she said, I've been in here looking for you, and they always tell me I don't know, they don't know who you are. And she said, well, honey, I told you I'm a floater. You never know where you're going to find me in the store. I go where I'm needed. And she never saw her again. And one of the ladies says, I think you encountered an angel. Now, I have a friend that had a shop over in the Portage Lakes area, and Kelly knows who I'm talking about. And she was really down. Sales were real slow. And she had this older guy come in, looked like he didn't have two nickels to rub together, driving an old beat up Cadillac convertible, I think she called it. And anyhow, he spent $50 with her that day. And he gave her like 75 or something. Whatever he gave her was $20 more than what his purchase was. And she tried to give him back the change. He goes, oh, no, you keep that. That's seed money. That's seed money. You just keep that. And he left. And a couple months later, he came back again. And she said, oh, how nice to see you again. And again, he bought like $100 worth of stuff. And she tried to give him change for like 75. He said, oh, no, honey. He says, that's just seed money. She tried to watch him pull out of the driveway. He had to go up a little slant, and he was going to turn right. The car totally disappeared. It never left the parking lot. And he was in there one more time, and that time he just stopped in to see how things were going. And he said to her, well, darling, angels sometimes don't always look like you think they're going to. You have a nice day. And he left. Kelly probably remembers that. Bridget's shop. So it's just amazing. They do not look like what we think they should look like. They don't come with the wings or the halos. They come as a calm and ordinary person.
And that's what I think a lot of people, they either don't think about, or they have a misconception that they expect when visited by an angel, you know, white robes and big wings and halos, and that's not
Sometimes
always the
they're
case.
scruffy.
Those are the ones that we got to watch for. Well, folks,
Yeah,
we're going to take just a few minute break, and we are going to be right back. When we come back, we're going to talk about angels that guide us, our guiding angels, the angels that watch over us. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about a different topic. So we'll be right back here just after a few moments. Divine Awakenings New Age Emporium and Healing Arts Shop. It's the largest locally owned and operated metaphysical retailer in the Sandusky, Ohio Tri-County area. Serving the Firelands region since April of 2014, they're pleased to offer a space that is welcoming, relaxing, and open to everyone. In the Emporium, you will find a variety of unique gifts, special events and services, as well as classes and workshops to soothe your mind, body, and spirit. If you're in the Sandusky, Ohio area, look for Divine Awakenings at 1006 Tiffin Avenue, Sandusky, Ohio. Their phone number is 419-502-9137, and you can find them on Facebook at /Divine Awakenings LLC. For those that are joining a little bit later this evening or have tuned in a little bit late, we're talking about angels, and we covered the archangels. Down on the bottom left-hand screen is Reverend Pat Beers, and she and I are talking about archangels here and things that we have experienced ourselves. And the next topic that I really want to get into are what people often refer to as guardian angels or guiding angels that are in our life all the time. And Pat, would you say that there are specific angels that watch us through most of our lives, or a set of?
My understanding is that we are born with three angels: guardian angels, guiding angels, and just angels in general. And I very seldom call on them by name. I call on them by situation. I every night I thank the angels for standing guard over my doors and my windows by day and by night.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask that they stand guard over my children's and some close friends that I know need a little help, and all my friends and relatives and anyone who has need. So yeah. And then I feel they change. We will get, I understand that the three that we are born with pretty much stay with us, but as our needs change, or we need to be maybe pushed in a little direction like Michael did to me to get me to join this program, that they're there to either we're fulfilling a need for someone and don't know that that need is there, or the angels are helping us in our own personal growth by maybe pushing us out of the nest a little bit.
And that I have experienced myself, and I'm going to say that probably a lot of people have, when we get this push, and it's a constant push, until we listen to it and begin to work with it. It's not usually a discomforting thing, but it's this pressure, and it becomes ingrained in what we do. So when we start talking about guardian angels, those are the ones that help guide and protect us while we're going through life. Because just as we're talking about the angelic side, there's the not good side. And whether you are biblical or whether you are theological of any nature, whether you believe in a higher power, there's the good side and the bad side. And we're not going to talk about the bad side. We're going to leave that alone for a while. I'm not in for another show like we did with haunted items. Everything is running fine.
With Louis,
We're
poor
just
Michael. He was so upset.
that was a show that was a perfect example of how things happen when called on. So we're leaving that side. We're doing angelic for the night. But when we talk about guardian angels, these are the ones that, again, will begin to push you a little bit. Will begin to turn around and show you a different side of life. Or they bring people into your life very unexpectedly, but it's for a purpose. And if we don't pay attention, that's when we start seeing signs all over the place. Until we do pay attention. Whether you're driving down the road and you see a billboard that reminds you of what you're feeling that you need to do. Or you talk to a family member and they bring up the topic out of the blue. That's our guardian angel going, hey, I need your attention. We've got to talk about something here. These are also the ones that will shape part of your dreams and bring different people into your dreams. And these are also the ones that when you meditate or you take time to pray, these are the ones, I'm not going to call them an intermediary because I'm not of that sect, if you will. But they're kind of like an extension cord, if I could kind of put it that way. They're plugged directly into the main source. And we can kind of plug into them really quickly, rather than kind of going up the ladder, so to speak. So our guardian angels are the ones that are around us. They pay attention to us. They help work with us. And these are also the ones that will influence not only us, but the people that are directly around us. It's kind of, if you would think about it, if Pat and I were in the same room, and she's got something on her mind, and I've got something on my mind. Our angels will get together, and they'll basically have a conference and say, okay, how can we best get both of these people doing the same thing at the same time? And if you're in a situation, a boardroom meeting, an after-school meeting, and you see a lot of people that are agitated and they're all doing these same things, and then all of a sudden something changes, a shift in energetics, a shift in vocabulary. And all of a sudden, all of these people start to think and move in the same direction. That's not coincidence. It is not just because somebody changed the rhetoric of what they were saying. It wasn't because somebody went from being wishy-washy to adamant. That's the angelic side that is there kind of helping push that forward. Now, Pat, what kind of experience have you had with more of the guardian angel side of things?
When I was a kid, I was 12 years old. I used to clerk for an auctioneer. And before I started clerking for him, my mom worked with him doing the collecting the money and everything. I would often help people take their purchases to their car. Maybe they had 2 or 3 little boxes and they would give me a dime or a quarter or something. And it was so funny because now when I look back, and even when I was younger, I would look back and I go, I probably shouldn't have done that. And when I was with someone that I'm feeling kind of funky about, there would always be a man or a woman who's, oh, honey, that's too heavy for you. Let me help them with that. You go back over, and see what's going on over there. That happened. And it's just different people showing up at different times to help me with things that I didn't even know were a problem until later. I'm going, oh, that could have been real interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They're like unseen helpers, like that lady going to that exclusive part of the store. What makes you stop? Or I'll buy stones, or I'll buy something, and I don't know why I'm buying it. It's like, I really shouldn't be doing this. And then I'll encounter someone who says, boy, I could really use blah, 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 or I need. And so that's who I bought that for without knowing. And it's just interesting that way. Or I'll buy a crystal and I'll be wearing it. And it's like, I don't know why I'm wearing that today. I just bought it because it was pretty. And somebody's like, oh my gosh, that is beautiful. I bought a clay. It was just like a head, like a Native American kind of looking. And I bought it and I wore it to the grandmother's gathering in, where were we, Salt Fork? And somebody commented, oh, that was so pretty. Boy, I'd love, I've been looking for something like that. And I took it off and I said, here. Well, she wore it. We're only gone Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that was Friday night. I see her Saturday and I said, where's your necklace? So she said, oh, I gave it to so-and-so. She thought it was beautiful. And I just felt, I had satisfied that part that I wanted one. I got it. I enjoyed it. And so, that necklace went through 5 people before we left there. And it was just such a simple little, like, Native American head with a feather, and just a very simple necklace and it was just so funny that it went through 5 people. I think it went home to California with a lady. So the first person I gave it to admired it and liked it and said she'd been looking for something like that. She felt she had got whatever it was she needed from it. And each one of us put our own mark on it before we passed it on. It's just, and if I'm looking for something, I call sending out the call. Thank you, angels, for helping me to find da-da-da-da-da-da at a price I can afford, to do. So,
And this is something that Pat does in her everyday life. Trust me. She does it when she comes to the house, whether we're having dinner or she's just in town and, or just gathering just for grins and giggles. Pat, your friend Kelly put in the chat room, and I'm going to read this verbatim for people that are going to catch this on the podcast. She said, when I was 16, my best friend Amanda and I were up late making midnight mochas on the stove, and she left to go to the bathroom. Well, I was looking at my hands, and all of a sudden I felt someone grab my face and turn it to the stove. I had laid a towel next to the stove, and it caught fire. I was able to put it out without my parents and I going up in smoke. During that time in my life, I was very obsessed with angels. I painted them, etc. I knew that it was an angel that saved me and my family from my stupidity. Now, Kelly, that is awesome, but it's not stupidity. Don't ever put yourself down like that. But again, this is a perfect example of angelic force in your life. And Pat and I discussed this on the interlude while we were out there. The angelic forces, whether you are a theological Christian, Catholic, Buddhist, it doesn't matter. And even Pat said this, and this caught me by kind of by surprise, but I thought about it. Even if you're an atheist, being able to call on your angels, being able to ask them for help, is non-denominational.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, and if you are theological in nature, when God made the world, He did it for everybody with love, regardless of who was there, who was not. And the angels were in place then, they are still there now. Now, I noticed that Shelley, my wife, had joined the chat room. And this, go ahead and say that again. I was talking over
Hi, Shelley. Hi, Shelley.
This happened to Shelley, our daughter Alicia, and myself. It was the first time we had bought a used car and we were going to go to see friends in Cape Coral, Florida. And the car looked good, everything was running well, had a tune-up done. We made it from here to Columbus, just out to the north side of Columbus, and there was traffic. Now, anybody that travels down south going through Columbus knows that it's a 2-lane or a 3-lane. Well, they were doing construction. It was necked down to a single lane in each direction. And I blew a flat tire. And I'm like, oh, okay. There was enough of a shoulder. I pulled off, got the donut out of the car, put the donut on the car, put it back in, went about 45 feet, and the donut blew out. And we're all sitting here, and I'm going, what the hell are we going to do? I'm very worried. Here's my family in the car. How am I going to take care of them? All of a sudden, this state worker's truck pulls up behind us. The guy gets out. I get out and talk to him. He goes, look, why don't you take your car, go behind the cement barrier, and park it under the bridge? That way, nobody can get to it, and your family will be safe. I'll take your rim, and we'll go get you a new tire. He goes, I'm working a little further down the road. This guy took me to get the tire, brought me back, helped me change the tire, and then he was gone. Now, his truck was even though it was a state truck, it was very specific looking, okay, to where you could pick it out in a crowd of trucks. And the entire time going through all the construction, Shelley and I never saw that truck again. We never saw him. We never saw the truck. He would not take any money from me for gas, for coffee, for nothing. He goes, I'm glad that your family's safe. Take care, be careful on your journey. And he was gone.
That's the way it works.
That's exactly how it works. And even now I got goosebumps and my hairs are all standing up. But this is the kind of thing that angelics do. They're not there to blow their trumpet and go, look at me. They are there to help get us through a particular situation the easiest way they can, with love and with gratitude, and then they're gone. That's how they work. Now, Pat, you said you have a letter that you wanted to read.
I want to. I belong to, those of you in the Cleveland area might remember an astrologer named Buzz Myers. And we had a group called followthemoon.org or For Purpose Inc. And Joey Crenita, a wonderful man from a medium from Canada, made us cry with this. We always met usually in September. This is a soldier's encounter with St. Michael. This was forwarded to us by a reader. This is a story about a young Marine named Michael who wrote a letter home to his mother while he was in the hospital after having been wounded in Korea in 1950. A Navy chaplain named Father Walter Muldy apparently was given this letter. He checked the facts and concluded that what was in the letter was definitely true. A year later, he read the letter in public for the first time to a gathering of 5,000 Marines at a naval base in San Diego. Here's the letter. Dear Mom, I wouldn't dare write this letter to anyone but you because no one else would believe it. Maybe even you will find it hard to believe, but I've got to tell somebody. First off, I'm in a hospital. Don't worry. Yeah, hear me, Ma. Don't worry. I was wounded, but I'm okay. You understand? The doctor says I will be up and around in about a month, but that's not what I wanted to tell you. Remember when I joined the Marines last year? And remember when I left how you told me to say a prayer to St. Michael every day? You really didn't have to tell me that, Mom. Ever since I can remember, you always told me to pray to St. Michael, the Archangel. You even named me after him. Well, I always have. Well, when I got to Korea, I prayed even harder. I remember the prayer that you taught me. Michael, Michael, in the morning, fresh court of heaven adorning. You know the rest of it. Well, I said it every day, and sometimes even when I was marching or sometimes when we were resting, but always before I went to sleep. I even got some of the other fellows to say it too. One day I was up in an advanced detail, way up over the front lines, and we were scouting for the commies. I was plodding along in the bitter cold. My breath was like cigar smoke. I thought I knew every guy in our patrol when alongside of me came another Marine I never met before. He was bigger than anybody I'd ever seen, any Marine. He must have been 6'4". He was built in proportion, and it gave me a feeling of security to have such a body near me. Well, anyway, we were trudging along, and the rest of the patrol had spread out. Just to start a conversation, I said, "Cold, ain't it?" And he laughed. And with a good chance of and here I was with a good chance of getting killed any minute, and I'm talking about the weather. My companion seemed to understand. I heard him laugh softly. I looked at him and I said, "I've never seen you before. I thought every man I knew, every one of us in the outfit." "Oh, I just joined at the last minute." He said, "My name is Michael." "Is that so?" I said, surprised. "That's my name too." He said, "I know." And they went on. And he said that and then went on, "Michael, Michael of the morning." I was too amazed to say anything for a minute. How did he know my name and a prayer that you'd taught me? I smiled at myself, and then every guy in the outfit knew about me. Hadn't I taught that prayer to anybody that would listen? Well, now and then they even referred to me as Saint Michael. Neither of us spoke for a time, and then he broke the silence. He said, "We're going to have some trouble up ahead." He must have been in fine physical shape, or he was breathing so lightly I couldn't see his breath. Mine poured out in great clouds. There was no smile on his face now. Trouble ahead, I thought to myself. Well, with the commies all around us, that's no great revelation. The snow began to fall in great thick globs. In a brief moment, the whole countryside was blotted out, and I was marching into a cold white fog of sticky particles. My companion disappeared. "Michael!" I shouted in a sudden alarm. I felt his hand on my arm, and his voice was rich and strong, and he said, "This will stop shortly." His prophecy proved to be correct. In a few minutes, the snow stopped as abruptly as it had begun, and the sun was a hard, shining disk. I looked back for the rest of the patrol, but there was no one in sight. We lost them in that heavy snowfall. I looked ahead as we came over the rise. Mom, my heart stopped. There were 7 of them, 7 commies in their padded pants and jackets and their funny hats. Only there wasn't anything funny about them now. There were 7 rifles aimed at us. "Down, Michael!" I screamed, and I hit the frozen earth. I heard those rifles fire almost as one. I heard the bullets, and there was Michael still standing, Mom. Those guys couldn't have missed him, not at that range. I expected to see him literally blown to bits, but there he stood, made no effort to fire himself. It's like he was paralyzed with fear. It happens sometimes, Mom. Even the bravest. He was like a bird fascinated by a snake. And at least that was what I thought. Then I jumped up to pull him down, and that's when I got mine. I felt a sudden flame in my chest, and I was wondering what it felt like to be hit. Well, now I know. I remember feeling strong arms around me, arms that laid me ever so gently on the pillow of snow. I opened my eyes for one last look. I was dying. I maybe even thought I was dead. But I remember thinking, well, this ain't so bad. Maybe I was just looking into the sun. Maybe I was in shock. But it seemed I saw Michael standing erect again. Only this time his face was shining with a terrible splendor. As I say, maybe it was the sun in my eyes, but he seemed to change as I watched him. He grew bigger, his arms stretched out wider, and maybe it was the snow falling again, but there was a brightness around him like the wings of an angel. In his hands was a sword A sword flashed with a million lights. Well, that's the last thing I remember until the rest of the fellows came up and found me. I do not know how much time passed. Now and then I had but a moment's rest from the pain and the fever. I remember telling them of the enemy just ahead. Where's Michael? I asked. I saw them look at one another and say, Where's who? Michael, the big Marine I was walking with just before the snow squall hit us. Kid said to the sergeant, You weren't walking with anybody. I had my eyes on you the whole time. You were getting too far out, and I was just about to call you in when you disappeared in the snow. He looked at me curiously. He said, How'd you do that, kid? How'd I do what? I asked, half angry despite my wound. The Marine named Michael and I were just son, the sergeant said kindly. I picked you out this outfit myself, and there isn't another Michael in it. You're the only Mike in it. He paused for a minute. Just how did you do it, kid? We heard so many shots. There hasn't been a shot fired from your rifle. There isn't a bit of lead in them 7 bodies over the hill there. I didn't say anything. What could I say? I could only open my mouth with amazement. It was then the sergeant spoke. Kid, he said gently, every one of those 7 commies was killed by a sword strike. That's all I can tell you, Mom. As I say, it may have been the sun in my eyes, or it may have been the cold or the pain, but that's what happened. Love you, Michael.
Wow.
And the prayer is, Michael, Michael of the morning, fresh cord of heaven adorning, keep me safe today in time of temptation, drive the devil away. So you can just look up, well, I go back to the very beginning here, a soldier encounters St. Michael. And I didn't cry.
That's exactly how things work, folks. It's not joking kind of stuff. We make fun, or we poke fun, or a lot of people may disbelieve at different points in time. But when you start adding up all the people that have seen true angelic form, just like in that letter, or they have felt it, or they have witnessed it, or it's happened to them, if you were to gather all those people together, it grows every day. Every day there's someone new that has experienced it yet again, and their eyes are full of wonder, and they stop and they reflect, and at times it's a very life-changing event. And so these are things that happen in our everyday lives. Whether you are talking about archangels, whether you're talking about guardian angels, whether you're talking about angels that just show up in our life to help us through an event, they're always out there. They're always around you. You run into a problem, just like Pat. She is constantly talking with them, constantly doing something, but it's always with reverence, gratitude, capability. And they respond.
And it doesn't have to be for you. If you know someone's having emotional problems, physical problems, financial problems, any kind of problem, thank you, angels, for being there and helping them to see what they need to see so they can do what they need to do, or give them a boost in some way, whatever way that boost is going to make the most sense to them.
And that's the important part, folks, is, again, just as she said, it doesn't always have to be for yourself. If you know somebody that's in need, or you know somebody that's in trouble, take the time, stop, say a short prayer, and then continue moving forward in life, because that's how it's going to go about. Rose Danko,
Hi,
nice
Rosie.
to see you this evening. I just saw that in the chat room. Well, folks, we're going to wrap up for this evening. We're trimming our show back to an hour in length. Sometimes a little bit shorter, but not always. But this evening, again, we were talking about archangels, angels that walk among us in our lives, that help us out, our guardian angels, and even a little bit more on top of that. I'm glad to see everybody that was here this evening. Pat, it was a pleasure to be able to spend time with you this evening.
I enjoy it.
And everybody, we will be back again next week. Heather is on vacation next week. She is going to be in Hawaii on a retreat and learning some new things. So the week after that, we'll be talking with her and see what she would have learned. I'm sure she's going to be excited to talk about it. There's no doubt about it. And this, again, people mention angelic. Just her short story She didn't have a lot of money because she is single parent, newly engaged, with children. So she's always constantly taking care of the kids and doing things. And she found enough money to be able to pay the beginning parts of the retreat, and stepping out on faith and telling her angels thank you, she was able to get a flight to where she needed to go. And just like she mentioned last week, here again, out of the blue, she didn't know how to get home, had a discussion with a friend of hers. Her friend went ahead and is getting her the ticket home. Well, following up after that, she was expecting a sum of money, that was supposed to arrive, and it wasn't arriving, and she was getting very, very wound up about it.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, but she persevered, and she talked with Pat and I said, look, this is where you have to continue working on faith, understanding what you believe in truly. Now, the next day, all of a sudden, she got a check that was mailed to her that she was not looking for, did not expect, was not accounted for, and it was enough to cover her expenses while she was waiting the arrival of the other money. So her entire trip had been taken care of. These are the angels that work in our lives, and when we believe and we work with them, it becomes a stronger bond all the time. So, whether you're in a mode of thinking about angels or not, just remember they're out there. Pat, we will be back again next week. Glad to see everybody here in the chat room this evening. I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Can I add something, Michael?
You sure can.
It's like her going to Hawaii. She wanted to go in the synchronicity of how this came about. And I will often say, okay, God, angels, if you want me to do this, then you got to show me how I'm going to get there, because I don't have any idea. And if you just, I did my best, I give you the rest. It's amazing how things work out.
Yep. They will show you. When you ask questions in a metaphysical fashion, and it is sincere and heartfelt, you will always get an answer. Hands down, every time. It's happened way too many times in my life. I know damn well it's happened way too many times in Pat's life for her to say, oh, that's not true. Not so. Not so. All right, Pat. Thank you very much.
Bye, y'all.
Yep.
Have a good week.
Everybody have a great weekend, and we will see you again next Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock.
And I'll be at Divine Awakenings on Saturday.
There you go. Now you know where Pat will be. Everybody have a great night.